Hi, I'm Chris Wallace, in tonight for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching. Our top story, President Trump wows the crowd at CPAC today with a rousing speech that hit on a number of familiar themes. Immigration, the wall, ISIS, the economy, and Obamacare. But it was his blistering attack on the media that really got the crowd going. The president doubled down on his condemnation of unnamed sources and so-called fake news.
A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. In fact, in covering my comments, the dishonest media did not explain that I called the fake news the enemy of the people, the fake news. They dropped off the word fake, and all of a sudden, the story became the media is the enemy. They take the word fake out. I'm against the people that make up stories and make up sources. They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name. Somebody said, a poll came out. And I say, what network is it? And they'll say a certain, let's not even mention names, right? Sure. Well, you have a lot of them. Look, the Clinton News Network is one. But as you saw throughout the entire campaign, and even now, the fake news doesn't tell the truth.
But one of the targets of Mr. Trump's fire, the editor of the New York Times, makes no apology for his paper's coverage of the Trump administration.
I think the coverage of Donald Trump has been sensational. I mean sensational in a good way, not sensationalistic. I think it's been tough. I think it's been aggressive. I think he's not used to it.
Joining us now from Miami with reaction, Fox News analyst Bernie Goldberg, purveyor of BernardGoldberg.com. Bernie, what do you make of President Trump's continued general attack on, quote, fake news media and his specific attack now on the use of unnamed sources?
This isn't Donald Trump shooting from the lip, as he so often does. This is a coordinated, calculated war on the media, and the goal is simple. Try to bring them down, try to delegitimize them, try to take away what credibility they may still have left, eviscerate that credibility, so that when they, and they will, report something Donald Trump doesn't like, and I don't mean just doesn't like, I mean really doesn't like, people won't believe them. It comes down to a sentence. Steve Bannon and Donald Trump want to bring the mainstream fake media, as they put it, down before the media bring them down.
Let me pick up on that, because the president complained in his diatribe about unnamed sources. He complained specifically about a Washington Post story that had 9 unnamed sources. And he said, well, that's bull. They didn't have any sources. But in fact, the story he's referring to was a Washington Post story that revealed the fact that when General Michael Flynn spoke to the Russian ambassador, despite his earlier denials, that he had actually talked about sanctions with the Russian ambassador. And fake news or not, it was on the basis of that information, not necessarily the story, but the warning from the Justice Department, that Trump fired Michael Flynn.
Exactly, exactly. Look, let's talk about sources and about one of the sound bites that you played leading up to this segment. Donald Trump says, and this isn't me, this is Donald Trump saying today at CPAC, that reporters shouldn't be able to use any sources without attaching a name to it. Okay, if that were the case, we wouldn't know what was going on in the Nixon White House during Watergate, because Deep Throat was an anonymous source. But
listen, we wouldn't know a lot of what's going on in the Trump White House. We have unnamed sources from the Trump White House all the time.
Exactly, exactly. And let's just go to today at CPAC. A couple of hours before Donald Trump made that statement, there was a press briefing at the White House held by 2 top officials of the Trump administration, but there was a condition, Chris, and the condition was that they be anonymous sources, okay? I mean, come on. How could Donald Trump go up there and say there should be no anonymous sources, you should attach a name to it, 2 hours after his own people want to remain as anonymous sources.
Bernie,
It's
let
crazy.
me ask you about another dust-up today at the White House. And Sean Spicer, after the president's CPAC speech, invited a bunch of reporters. There was more than a dozen reporters invited into his office for a briefing, but he specifically excluded reporters from the New York Times and CNN. What do you make of that?
Well, let me make sure I understand this. When Barack Obama's White House tried to marginalize and delegitimize Fox News, conservatives rightly were angry. When the Obama White House wouldn't let people come on your Sunday show, we were angry at that too, again rightly. But now the Trump White House is saying we don't like these news organizations because they're unfair to us, so we'll keep them out.
We should point out, Bernie,
we're supposed to accept that?
Well, let me just say, I should point out that the White House Correspondents Association, including Fox News, has formally filed a protest with Sean Spicer about that, the idea of marginalizing and saying some news organizations will be allowed into a briefing, but others won't.
Right, but there are two parts of this that are hypocritical. The Trump White House part and the people who are the most avid supporters of Donald Trump. According to a CBS poll, that's only 22% who say they support him, period. That's the words in the poll, period. We support him under any circumstances. They don't care about this. Their position is, you did it to us, now we're doing it to you. And that's why I've said before, and I'll say it again tonight to you, Chris, in the world of political dialogue, principles are either dead or on their deathbed.
Okay, let me ask you, I got just a little bit of time left, and I want to get into one more thing with you because there's another controversy at the White House today. One reason that the White House may be mad at CNN is that they reported a story that Reince Priebus tried to put pressure on the FBI to knock down a story that had gotten wide circulation, that there was lots of association during the campaign between Trump associates and Russian intelligence. What do you make of that story?
Well, first of all, I don't know what's true and what isn't true. I don't necessarily believe a mainstream media's version of it, but I don't necessarily believe Donald Trump's version of it either. Look, a lot of this, the press brings on itself. Some reporters, the animosity level against Donald Trump in some quarters is in the unhealthy range. Some reporters would like to see him destroyed. But bias, as bad as it is, isn't fake news. There's a big difference, and I think Donald Trump, sooner or later, is going to have to realize that news he doesn't like isn't fake. It's bias, which shouldn't be. Fake news is Hillary Clinton's running a sex ring for children out of a pizzeria in Washington. That's fake. Reporters, I worked at CBS News for 28 years. They have biases, they have faults, but they don't go into a room and say, let's make up sources and let's make up stuff to hurt Reagan, Bush, or Donald Trump. It doesn't happen that way.
Bernie Goldberg, everyone. Bernie, thank you. Straight ahead, more on that dust.